This is my twin sister. Ready? Okay. Good afternoon. We're glad that you are here for our sprouting class and microgreens. And my name is Martha Rentfro, and I'm the director of the Lost Skills program here. This is our second year, the end of our second year that we've been doing it. And our whole purpose is to help people be as sustainable as possible. Everybody's in a different place, you know, but teaching old skills, that's why it's called lost skills, skills that, you know, some of us hadn't learned through our parents or school or whatever. So one thing that we want to do is, first of all, we have prayer because our presenters want to make sure that you understand what they're trying to get across, and the Lord just helps us. Dear Father in heaven, we thank you so very, very much for your care, and we ask that you will bless anybody else who's coming today, that you will give them traveling mercies. And Lord, as the topic of sprouting is going to be taught today, sprouting and growing microgreens, we thank you that you have created the seeds in such a way that they can sprout, that they can grow, that they can give the nutrition that we need. And we ask that you will help us to understand what we need to be able to utilize this skill. In Jesus' name we pray, amen. Okay, I would like to introduce to you my sister and brother-in-law. Go ahead and stand up so they can see you. And am I too far away? This is my twin sister, Meredith Snyder, and her husband, Walter Snyder. And they'll say themselves, they're still learning. But they have been successful in certain times, and you know, we're all learning how to do things better. So I think you will enjoy this program.
Thank you very much. Okay. Are we back now? Yeah. Okay, so you all got a handout? Okay, great, no problem. You don't have to follow along with that if you don't want to, but I just wanted to make sure you got it. So one of the things that Walter and I are really try to stick by is anything that we do or that we, you know, are trying to decide if we believe that way, we try to run it by the Bible. And you know what? Even our diet, we can run by the Bible. And so Genesis 1, chapter 29, the first chapter in the Bible, it says, "And God said, See, I have given you every herb that yields seed, which is on the face of all the earth, and every tree whose fruit yields seed. To you it shall be food." So even the herbs and the plants and of the field, they have nutrition in them. God created them that way because he knew what our bodies needed. He created them to be sufficient for that. So, as was mentioned, we're going to be talking about sprouts and microgreens. And first of all, I thought maybe we better just do a little bit of, review the definitions. The definition of sprouts, it's seeds that have germinated and have, after having been soaked, then allowed to mature for 4 to 7 days. And then the whole sprout, including the seed, is consumed. So we'll be talking about that and how we get there. And then microgreens. What's the difference? Well, microgreens are tender, immature greens. They're larger than sprouts and usually straighter, right? Sprouts can be straight too, though. Okay, but then they're smaller than baby vegetables, vegetable greens. So they grow usually until the first 2 true leaves come out and divide. Okay, so have you noticed when a seed is sprouting, you get 2 leaves that come up there? And those are the 2 baby leaves, okay? They're not called the true leaves. The very first ones are just the immature leaves. But then, soon after that, you will see 2 more leaves come up above them, and those are called the true leaves. Okay, that's what that's talking about. Microgreens usually take 7 to 21 days to mature to the proper stage. Now, if they go longer than the first true leaves, and Walter will talk about that more, they're a different stage, but it doesn't mean that they're not edible. Okay, so when talking about microgreens and sprouts, one of the sources that I was looking at, and it's listed there, they were saying that they're among the most nutrient-dense, enzymatically rich healing foods on the planet. So see, what they're dealing with is what was inside the seed, right? That's all the nutrition that they're giving you, is what was inside the seed. And it's very concentrated enzymes, very rich in those. Now, another way of putting it is that sprouts, and you can say microgreens too, are a powerhouse. They're full of health and nutrition. Okay, so they do give some benefits. Health benefits of sprouts is listed here, but it's the same for microgreens. They have a pretty good amount of protein and dietary fiber. They lower the risk of cardiovascular disease. They are very protective against cancer, and they can also help to heal in some of the healing of cancer. They improve the immune system function. We'll be talking about that just a little bit more in a little bit. They help to control the blood sugar. In other words, anti-diabetic. And they can help prevent obesity. They improve digestion and absorption of the nutrients. That's especially that, and the immune system we're going to be talking about in a minute. They are therapeutic against free radical damage. And they are a really good source of minerals like zinc, magnesium, iron, and calcium. Zinc is a very good antiviral. So zinc can protect us against the viruses that are coming around. Good reason to have sprouts in our diet, I guess, huh? Okay. One of the things that's fun about sprouts and microgreens is they're colorful. Look. They can be very colorful, and it's too bad that we didn't have some red varieties. That would be really pretty to have the two. So they're very vivid in their colors. They have really neat and exciting textures when you bite into them, And their flavors are very good. Now you're going to find different flavors. Some are much better. You like the flavor better than others. That's pretty typical, isn't it, of anything? And so you'll notice some of the different flavors. Now, they can produce. The neat thing about them is they can be produced in a short time. If any of you are gardeners or have gardened, it takes a while to get the produce, right? These, short time, 21 days max, for any of these things that we've grown. So let's talk just a little bit about, go a little bit deeper on the nutrition. Because one of the neat things that sprouts, and my source on this is more on sprouting, but microgreens can do some of that too, okay? But sprouts help with the immune system. Okay, you've heard of autoimmune diseases. Okay, there's lots of those around. And why? One of the big, what's the word I'm looking for? Things in common that most of the autoimmune system, autoimmune diseases have in common is the problem starts in the gut. And you know what? We haven't really realized, well, you may have started noticing that you get more and more people having autoimmune diseases. I have a friend who says she has 5 of them. She's been told she has 5 of them. And what is causing all these autoimmune diseases? Well, it is gut issues. And what is causing all those gut issues? Well, some things can be, how our food is grown by the farmers. The sprays they put on them and things like that. Big issue because that affects our gut very badly. And there are other things too, but that is one of the biggest things, is this Roundup and whatever else they put on the fields. It can cause some big issues in the gut. So, of course, trying to stay organic helps that a lot. But there's another thing, and that is if we can get all the nutrients available out of our plant foods, our beans, and anything that we're eating that is plant-based, that's where all the nutrients is, right? The real strong nutrients that will help keep us from getting a lot of diseases and help us improve if we've had any of them. So, one of the ways to get the most nutrients out of plant-based foods is to sprout them. Why? Because in that seed, there are some plant lectins they're helping protect the seed and all, but they also they are called anti-nutrients. they will bind to those nutrients and not let them go, because that seed needs those nutrients to grow, right? And so they are going to they're going to do their best to keep all those nutrients in the seed, so when it's ready to grow, it has what it needs. Well, so how can we get the most out of the seeds, the nutrients? We can soak the seeds. That's the first thing. Soak them overnight. Okay? So at least 8 hours, 8 to 12 hours of soaking the seeds. Now, if you really want to go all out and get all the anti-nutrients out that you can at least once, if not twice, during that 12-hour period, dump the seeds in a colander or a sieve. Dump the water in the seeds, rinse them real good, put them back in to soak again. And the more you do that, the more of those anti-nutrients you get rid of. Another way, okay, let me back up just a little bit. 3 things that you need to do to get rid of those that will get rid of those anti-nutrients is soaking, sprouting, and cooking. Okay? So, if you soak them overnight, and you can do the extra rinsing, but then after you soak them, rinse them and let them drain, and I'll show you how to do the sprouting in just a little bit. Let them drain and let them sprout. And every 12 hours, rinse them again. And they need to sprout at least 12 hours, if not 24. And some can go to 48 hours. Now, this is talking about your legumes. Let's see. Grains, seeds, nuts, and legumes all have these anti-nutrients. So, all of those, any grains, seeds, nuts, and legumes, you can try to, work on getting rid of those, and you'll get rid of a lot of them if you do this process. So, that will make the nutrients in the nuts, grains, seeds, and legumes, it will make those more available for your body. Okay. Now, how do we sprout? Well, first of all, what can you sprout? You can sprout, this is quinoa. It's called, quinoa is a pseudo grain, they call it, because it's not grown from a grass. It's a plant. It has regular leaves on it, but it is a pseudo grain. If somebody has celiac or is gluten intolerant, they can use this. Here is buckwheat. Again, that is a pseudo grain. Alfalfa. You heard of alfalfa? Alfalfa seed. This is flax seed. We'll talk about how that goes too. Mung beans. You know where they use mung beans more? Chinese foods, yes.
The flax seed, do you have problems with it?
We're going to talk about that one.
Egg-like?
We're going to talk about that one in just a little bit. Yeah. Lentils. Well, these look like split peas, but lentils, and I'll show you some lentils. And this is wheat berries. Have you seen in the grocery store these little packets of wheatgrass? That's from this. They grow them tall, and you can eat that eat the wheatgrass. Make smoothies out of it. It's really good for the health too. Okay, and even chia. And chia and flax we'll be talking about in just a little bit. Okay, so first of all, one thing you want to take into consideration is how big are your sprouts going to get? Okay, meaning, okay, so alfalfa. Those seeds are teeny, teeny, tiny, okay? But there's a lot of them. We can use 2 tablespoons in a quart jar. I'm trying to remember how much I did for the lentils. Let me talk about those in a little bit. Okay. So I did clover. I don't have the clover over here. I did.
How much water? You said 2 tablespoons.
Yeah, I'll talk about that in just a second. So what you're going to do is you're going to put your seeds in your jar. I'm going to do alfalfa here. And it depends on how much you think you need and are you going to use too. You can put 1 or 2. I'm going to put 1 because we're overrun with sprouts in our house right now. Getting ready for this thing. Okay, so you put your seeds in there and then you just fill it with water. And it doesn't have to be full, but you want it good and above what the seeds are going to absorb overnight. So now if I was doing lentils or something that's bigger, I would do it a little bit more too. Okay? Now, that is all you have to do overnight. Just leave it out on the counter and leave it for 12 hours. Yes?
Do you need to cover it during this process of soaking?
Only if you have something that you think might get into it. At this point, you don't have to cover it at all. Just the soaking. If you want to protect it against, if you have gnats in the house or whatever, you can cover it. Okay, or if you have dust flying around. So that's all it takes for there. Now, 12 hours later, 8 to 12 hours later, you are going to want to rinse those, and then you can, then you'll set them out to sprout. There are several different ways you can do this. I got these little stainless steel screen type things, and they fit right inside a jar lid. And you can use that over it. There are these that people have gotten to. If you notice, this one is quite fine. This will take care of those small ones. If it's something a little bit bigger, like say the buckwheat or something like that, you might want something a little bit bigger. Or any of your beans, these will work well for those, the larger screen. I think my mother probably bought them in one of the dollar stores or something to that effect. Garage sale. Okay. No, they can be bought locally. Usually. Nylon hose. Yes, we've used nylon hose. I've used screen, but I wasn't, I finally got to realize this nylon type screen. I got to realizing, I'm not sure if that's totally food quality or not. So I've, food grade, yeah. Plastic canvas. Cut it this size. Plastic canvas, the art, crafty stuff. And, or tulle. Yeah, you could use tulle, the fabric, with holes. Anything that'll let the water go through, and let air come through. So what you're going to do is you're going to, once they have been soaked for 24 hours, you are going to dump this water out. And what I do is I let it drain for just a little bit, but then what I want to do is I want to spread them out a little bit because otherwise they clump too much. So I will shake them around till they're spread out a little bit. And then I just put them in a bowl of some kind and set them at an angle so any extra water can drain out still and air can come in. And, because they need good air circulation. Light at this point, you don't need light. In fact, better if you don't have it. I've been known to empty a cupboard for for a few days, stick them up in the cupboard. You could put a towel over them. But they don't need and prefer not to have the light right now. In fact, we'll be talking more specifically about that with the microgreens. It's very important so that they can start growing, they can start stretching out. And that's what they're doing. If you want them to be long, they need to stretch out. Okay, so that's pretty much it. Now, twice a day, you're going to rinse that. One thing we have learned in the last 4 weeks as we've been trying different things. This is our second time to do this presentation in 4 weeks. So one thing we have learned is that broccoli, we hadn't done a lot with broccoli before, at least in the sprouting. And it's been a long time since we even did it with the microgreens. Broccoli is a lot slower. It's a lot slower. And this is what we got. You see, it's pretty small. That's our broccoli. That was 1 tablespoon. So, and that's been, we started that a week ago today. Now, same day I started the lentils and the clover. So, you get a little picture of the different ways that they do. Now,
Were the lentils a tablespoon?
the lentils, I'm trying to remember whether it was 1 tablespoon or 2. One thing that I've been doing more study about the autoimmune things and sprouting to help get the nutrients, better nutrients. And one of the things is if you're going to do lentils, especially if you're doing, if you just want to cook some lentils for lentil stew or something like that, if you're going to get the best nutrients out of it, soak them a day or 2 ahead, and then, and rinse them here and there, and then sprout them. But do it in a bowl. Whoop, forgot it's water. Do it in a bowl because they're going to grow. If you get too many lentils in here, they'll break the glass. They're that strong. Go ahead.
I had a big strainer that fits over the sink, and I put lentils in there, and then just put a wet towel over them after I had soaked them, and then they were sprouting in that with a wet towel.
Yeah, that'll work. Okay, what she was saying is that she has a strainer or colander, you could use either one, that fits over the sink, and she put her lentils in there. Well, after they had been soaked, she put them in there to drain and then put a wet towel over top of them, and that kept them in a good environment to grow. And now, do you need to let them, how long do you need to let them sprout? You know, if you're just cooking lentils, 12 to 48 hours, depending on how quickly, how much you want. They don't have to have big, long tails. I did this one because I thought it'd be fun to have that for a salad, But for just 12 to 48 hours. So that's helping to get rid of the anti-nutrients so that you're going to get more nutrients out of that. Oh, one other thing, the advantage there is it not only gets rid of the anti-nutrients, but it also helps. These anti-nutrients sometimes will bind the nutrients to the wall of the gut, and then it's not doing any good. It's not going anywhere. It's staying there. And so you're not getting the effects of them. So it's getting rid of the anti-nutrients is, helping those nutrients to be available, but also helping the nutrients not to just stick there in the gut. Absorption is what it's helping. Very good. Okay, so a question had been asked about chia and flaxseed. Guess what happens when you when you put water with chia or flaxseed? It starts getting a little gelatinous. And in fact, there are recipes for using flaxseed in water as a substitute for eggs. It helps to give binding. Okay, so the idea here is there is no way you're going to be able to sprout these. So the idea is just use 1 tablespoon of the seeds and 3 tablespoons of water. Let it soak for 8 to 12 hours overnight, and then just use it as is. Just use it as is, the whole thing. Don't try to pour out the water. It's all going to be one glob of gel. So I started this maybe a half hour before the program started. I put the water in. So you see how much it's gelled already. Okay, so chia and flaxseed, that's the way to do those. Let me see. The other thing is pumpkin seeds. I didn't bring any. Pumpkin seeds or sunflower seeds can be used. They can be soaked and sprouted for 12 hours or so. And then you can dehydrate them, put them in the dehydrator for 24 hours, and then you can grind them up or in the blender or whatever and make a butter out of them. And that way, you don't have all the oil and fat. That's natural fat instead of the other stuff. Go ahead.
If you're soaking pumpkin seeds and sunflower seeds that have been shelled, is that really going to sprout, or is it going to, because it would have to sprout out of the shell? So
I don't know. I don't know on that one. I don't think you're getting a full sprout, like you would a seed that has the shell. I have not tried this one yet. I've just read about it.
I have read also with those, you can grow them in a soil medium to grow some sprouts to be able to cut.
You mean the ones with the shell?
Yeah.
Yes, we have done that back about 5, 6, 7 years ago. we did sunflowers in microgreens, and they just have a different flavor to them. They have a little bit of a metallic aftertaste to them, but not everybody likes them. But they were interesting. They were good. Okay, go ahead, Lisa.
Just simply comment, make sure you don't get roasted ones, but get raw ones.
That's right. That's right. When you're soaking and sprouting sunflower seeds and pepita seeds, things like that, make sure that you're using raw. The roasted already does not work. Okay, so there was one other thing. Oh, yes, this is what I was going to tell. So, quinoa. I've been looking at a lot of recipes. My husband has celiac, so we're constantly looking for new ideas, you know. And so I was looking at some stuff, several recipes, where they call for sprouted quinoa flour. And you can buy sprouted quinoa flour. In fact, you can buy sprouted different types of grain things. But, like for me, one time recently I bought some sprouted steel-cut oats, you know, and that was good. But here, you can make it also. Take quinoa and soak it overnight. And I did like 3 cups in a bowl about this size. 3 cups of quinoa in a bowl about this size. And you want the water to be about that far above the level, 2 to 3 inches above. And just let it soak overnight that way. And then the next day I put it in a sieve that I had and rinsed it real good, got all that taken care of. And then I put it in jars. And you can use like a 64-ounce canning jar, or I just put it in 2 or 3 of these and sprouted it just like I do that. The next day, it's real cute. They have these little tails on them. And you've noticed if you've cooked quinoa, it has little tails on it anyway. So they were cute, and it all worked, you know. All I did was 24 hours, I think. I rinsed it twice a day, and then when it had little good little tails, then I trying to think. Hold on. I think I rinsed it again, and then I put it on my dehydrator racks, but I used parchment paper so it wouldn't go through. Put parchment paper out there and then just spread it out on that and stuck it in the dehydrator for about 24 hours. And when that got done with that, this is what I had. It's a little bit bigger than the other. But, and so with that, I'll just put it in the blender and make flour. Make quinoa flour. I haven't had time to do that yet. I've been working on but this was fun to try. Okay, one last thing. There are different ways. I showed you how to sprout in a jar. Here's a fancy stand for your jar. You'd want a little bowl underneath it to catch any drips. Lisa said she used this for growing them. You can put them on top.
And then you rinse them off as you would. Then you set them
Yeah.
And keep
Mhm.
it covered with the top
Mhm.
until 4 days.
This is the kind of screen like that I've used this type of screen. Just cut it in a piece like that, put it on top here, and use your thing here. Okay, here's another one, and you can find these commercially. Just a little tray, and these you just what? Oh, I'm sorry. You just pour the water down through the top, and it just filters all the way down. Mm-hmm. So. Mm-hmm.
I just fill the bottom.
So this is Martha's gadget.
I've had this for probably 12 to 15 years. And it's just really nice. You can put each one of these, all of them are used, but about every inch around the edges, there's a little hole that drains the water. And so I find that because there's 4 of them, I tend to take the bottom one because I don't think that they get as much light. So I kind of do this every time I've gone to, I usually used to do it once a day, but now I'm trying twice a day. But then you just take this, and this is clean water. I did it so it would be handy. And I just fill it, pour the water in there, quickly get it over here. And then it just it goes down. And because I think it had a lid that we lost, you just put a little saucer on it. It seems to do better, with the lid. We finally realized, we need the lid. So, yeah. So, and they get really nice and straight, and you'll see we'll have some over there. They get really nice and straight. What I did, I keep this in a dark portion of my kitchen at first. I put it in Wednesday, and last night I'm going like, they're still yellow. So I put them in the window of my kitchen, and they're very nice and green now. Yes.
One thing I've heard with those is you can put, like, you can stagger your sprouts.
Yes.
So you don't always have nice fresh green sprouts instead of doing all of those at once and having a ton of sprouts.
Exactly.
Stagger it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really nice. Yeah, you don't have to do all of them at once. You can put different kinds in them, and and like she said, stagger them. And then they come out really nice, and it really takes about 5 to 7 days. And then I just take it, I rinse them in the morning, and then maybe midday, after they've had a chance to kind of drain a little bit, I just take the whole thing, and it comes up like a mat. And just take it and put it in my container. And I don't tend to, you can talk about rinsing them. I don't tend to rinse them. But these...
You mean after they are in the fridge?
This hull off.
Oh.
Yeah. But these are really nice and straight, and I really like them.
That's what I was going to talk about next. Some people don't like the hull. Most people don't bother. It doesn't bother them that much. Now, you can get pretty heavy on the hulls on some of these. So what you can do, what I do is I just pour the water. I'll pour the water in up at the top. And especially on like clover and alfalfa sprouts. Those little holes just float right up to the top. Not all of them, but a good amount. And so I'll fill it up real high with water, and then I'll pour it off, and especially try to get the holes. And I'll keep pouring water in there, shaking them around, trying to get those holes to float up. you know, and that's how I get them as clean as that little bowl over there is alfalfa sprouts also that I did in a jar, and I just, you know, clean them up that way a little bit. I have a friend who thought that you needed to get every one of them off. There's no way. No way you can do that. So, okay. Real good. Any other questions about sprouts?
How long do they last?
Oh, good one. Okay, so part of it depends, but they will last a week to 2 or 3 weeks. And part of it is how you store them. Most of the time, just because we're trying to use them up quickly and all that, I'll just put them back in a jar like this, make sure that I switch from the screen to a solid lid here, and put them in the refrigerator. I do not rinse them. Now I might after 2 or 3 days, you know, if I'm thinking but I don't want them to be real wet in the refrigerator either, because that could make them go bad. So I might use a lid on that. Usually I just, you know, put them straight in with the lid into the refrigerator. Now, you can, some people will take them out, they'll rinse them real good, and then they'll dry them on either paper towel, or paper towel would be easier. Dry them a little bit, and then you can put them in a sealed container in the refrigerator, and they'll last even a little longer. Yeah.
Mine, as long as I haven't just rinsed them,
Mm-hmm.
just pulling them out and putting them in a container,
Mm-hmm.
they last almost 3 weeks.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because
So.
they're fresher than what you get at the grocery.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Okay. Any other questions? Yes.
Can you sprout brown rice? Brown rice?
You can sprout brown rice. Now it's going to be any of your grains you can sprout, but it'd be more for getting the nutrients out. Getting the anti-nutrients out. Do it for no more than 48 hours, you know, and then use it, and then cook it. You can cook.
I was gonna say, it wouldn't be good for like salads and eating raw. You'd have to go
Right.
ahead and cook.
You'd have to cook it, yeah.
It'll be more, the nutrients will be more available.
Right.
Rice and corn are monocots, so they'll look differently when they come up. It's a grass, and these are not grasses. So it'll be different, but it's not a problem.
So you can micro
Grow.
grow the rice.
You probably could.
Wheat is also a grass,
Yeah.
so it's a monocot.
Yeah.
If you take the seed and you soak it, you can divide it, and there's a little sprout in the middle between the 2 sides of the bean. That's a dicot.
Okay.
So it's a different plant, but you can still use it. It's still the same. Same principle.
Yeah, you could do that with the rice. You can do it with wheat and any other grain, you know.
Make a grass.
Make a grass out of it. Mm-hmm.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
And then one more question. How do you get the nice, tall, white, mung bean sprouts that the Chinese, you know, that
Yeah.
all I get is this long, skinny tail and a little short.
Yeah. None of us have figured that out yet. I'm sorry. Well, now Lisa was telling me that they.
I had no luck with that.
Yeah.
Just putting him in a organic muslin bag and doing it that way, but then they all.
It didn't. Yeah. She was saying in a muslin bag, you know, but it doesn't. They still aren't nice and straight.
I'm not sure about how to do it with the sprouts. But with microgreens, we'll get to that. How to make it tall and what we would normally call, if you're doing gardening plants, spindly. But you want, with microgreens, it to get tall and lanky because you're going to cut it off. And you don't want the dirt to get in your microgreen. All right. So it's exciting to see sprouts, and it's a shorter effort than microgreens. But if you take a microgreen and you take 20 grams, I was just hearing about this today, looking at another video on it, and they did 20 grams of seed. They had 280 grams, 287 grams, almost 30 grams of product that has wiped out the non-nutrient or the anti-nutrient. By the way, what is the anti-nutrient that we're talking about? It's called lectins. You've heard about lectins, different things about lectins. It's the anti-nutrients or the non-nutrient that we were reading about it recently. And I said, oh, okay, I'm going to remember that name. Now, when you see these leaves on the microgreen, that's not a true leaf. What is it called? It's cotyledon. Yes. And so that's the seed leaf. If you come up front here for just a second, come on up, and you can see on this one, where is it? It may be gone now. It was up here just a minute ago. Where's the other one? Oh, right here, right here. Leaves, and right down in the middle at the very valley, you'll see, all of you come on up, there's the true leaf. You want 2 true leaves showing up, and that's the correct time to harvest your microgreens. So when I say it's time to harvest, that's what you want to see is the 2 true leaves. Okay?
So that one is a daikon radish. This over here is clover, and you see the cotyledons and then the true leaf.
If you can rotate around so everybody can see it.
SDA.
So this one here is a true leaf on the red clover. So it's a little tiny thing, but it is a lot more. When you do microgreens, you're going to end up with a lot more benefit than just a seed. So you get more volume and more nutrients released. But it takes more effort. Now, on this one here, come on up again. This one here has been harvested once. Because I'm learning how to do microgreens better, I didn't water this one enough. And so some came up. You'll see some stubble there. See those stubbles? Mm-hmm. And then you'll see on top, you'll see the microgreens ready to harvest again. It's because a week ago I harvested, and then they said, oh, now we have space, we'll go up, and we have more water. So I learned some of the things that I have read and learned online. I said, okay, here in my use, I have to vary it just a little bit, okay? So how long does it take to grow sprouts? I'm sorry, question?
She has a question.
Okay.
These are the cotyledons?
No, yes, those
Yes,
are
those are the
cotyledons.
cotyledons in the valley.
In the valley, and that's where the true ones are.
That's the true leaf. Yes, and that's what you want when it's actually, if you want to call it ripe to harvest for microgreen, that would be it. Okay? How long does it take to grow sprouts? So this is the difference between sprouts and microgreens. 5 to 7 days. You might get by with 4 if you use a heat pad when you start. I was talking to some people about that. I with this one here, this would normally take 14 days. Do any of you garden? Do you put plants on a heating pad, a garden plant heating pad, to start your plants? Things I do. Beets take a long time. Herbs take a long time. But if I put them on a heating pad, instead of taking 7 to 21 days, 3 days they're up. And so I said, hey, can I do that with this? So gardening is experimentation, right? So I took this, I put the seeds on there, and I moistened it, and I put it on the heating pad, and I said, until I see the sprouts, I will heat it 80 degrees. That's what the heating pads are designed to be at. And so I said, okay, let's do this. This is 7 days, not 14 or 21 days. So it got me an early start. About 36 hours, I actually let them do a little more than just actually sprout. So it got them a good start. And then I said, I don't want to kill these plants. I want to be ready for this class today. So usually I should have started 14 days ago. And I had 7 days left. I said, I got to get this started. What can I do to rush this? And I don't recommend necessarily do it all the time, because you go to what are your risks of pushing it like that? When you have heat and you have dark and you have moist, thank you, mold. That's right. So you don't want mold, but you want growth. In this case, I wanted growth. This one is mixed greens. Also been on a pad, and that was because the mixed greens have longer and some things that take less. Swiss chard takes more days than lettuce. I'm sorry. Are we running out of steam? Okay. Is this better? It's all right? Okay. So those are some key points I wanted to bring out. What do you need for doing sprouts? Well, you have your sprouting container, whether it's a flat like this and makes nice straight sprouts, that's cool. I'm anxious to find out how we get those mung beans to do that. That's a good question. I like that. Clover, this is going to be curly clover, not straight clover, but it has the same nutritional value. There's no change in nutritional value because it's curly or straight, right? So you need the jar and the screen, and then a lid at the end, and a drain tray to drain the water into, so it doesn't get soggy or moldy. But anywhere from 4 to 7 days is kind of an idea of how long it takes to make sprouts. So you have to plan a little ahead. Microgreens is usually 14 to 21 days. Sometimes you push it, you can get 7 days instead of 21 days. So that's a benefit. Part of it is also your radishes come up quicker than things like Swiss chard and other things unless you push them. So part of it is just having fun experimenting and being willing to fail once or twice and say, I can't do that. That doesn't work, right? So if that's what you need, that's pretty simple, right? With microgreens, it's a little more complex. So you need a bottom tray with no holes in it, right? And then you need a dirt tray with holes in it so it can drain, allow the water up when you water feeding from the bottom, watering from the bottom. And then you have bricks for weight for each half. And then in the tray, you're going to have a medium to grow your microgreens in. And then you have the empty tray to put on top that you're going to weight. And then, of course, you need your seeds and a sprayer and saran wrap, plastic wrap, however you want to call it. That's what you need. Is there anything else? I didn't look at my list. And once you have it growing, you take your brick off, And then after another day or 3, you take your top off and you put it in a windowsill or under a light. These are LED shop lights. They're not very expensive, $100 and something grow lights. They're shop lights because you're going to grow. Now, I would put it on a timer because when I use this to grow microgreens or garden greens, I find that if I leave it 24/7, some of the edges turn yellow. That's a problem somewhere. I'm not a scientist, so I don't experiment to figure out exactly what it is, but I'm stressing the plant when it starts to turn yellow or discolor or whatever, not the natural, normal, pretty green leaves, okay? So that's your details. Let's see, is there anything else? Oh, yes, when you harvest, you want a scissors or a razor-sharp knife. It's easier to use the knife because you hold the top and you cut it off and you put it in the bowl. But if it's not razor sharp, you're going to pull the microgreens and you're going to have dirt in your microgreens. You don't want that.
Our son hasn't been to the house yet.
What?
Our son hasn't been to the house recently.
Yeah,
It's not
yeah.
razor sharp.
So I harvested the radishes last week, and we've used them, but I had to use the scissors because I didn't have a sharp enough knife. But if it's razor sharp, if it's really sharp, then you could just grab a handful of the tops, slice it off, put it in your bowl, and go all the way across. And it's a very quick harvest, so that saves you a lot of time. Question?
What's the advantage of microgreens over sprouts?
It's your choice. It is more volume. It is more size. Is there more vitamin K? I know they're strong in vitamin K. I'm not sure sprouts are strong in vitamin K. I would assume they would be strong, but I would assume, this is only an assumption, there's more green here, and so there will be more vitamin K, I would think. But that's a good question.
Yeah, there are some differences. Since I was preparing for sprouts, I focused more on that, but not big differences. When I read the list of health benefits of sprouts, they said it's pretty much the same for microgreens too.
Good question. How many times, say you take a lettuce plant and you harvest the leaf and you eat the leaf for the same volume of sprouts or microgreens, what is the nutritional value in times sake? In other words, how many times more for 1 ounce of microgreens or sprouts than it is for the same product at maturity? 4 to 40 times the same value. So if you need the nutrition but not the bulk or the calories, that's what you want. You want to focus more on this. Now, do you need the calories? You need a certain amount of calories. Don't starve. That's not the purpose. But you get so much more here than in the mature plant. It's a real, to me, it's worth the difference. Being autoimmune and having a malabsorption issue, it's really important for me to get a good kick with the value, right? I want more of what I need because my gut doesn't absorb it well. Okay. So she's demonstrating the harvesting. Thank you for doing that. That's what I was hoping you do. And I have a question. What can you use for the growing medium? We looked at that. It says it there. What can you use for the growing medium? What you put the plant seeds in. It tells us 3 different options: peat and peat-based soil mix. I use straight peat. You can get a brick of peat. I'm not sure how much of a yard it is, but it's a big block, and it's about 40 pounds. And I've used that for 1.5 years to start my plants and to use for microgreens. It's finer than garden soil or potting soil, but it's not quite as fine as the starting mix, which is more expensive. Yes?
Where do you get it, and do you try to get organic?
I haven't looked at that, see if it's organic. That's a good question. I just assumed peat would be organic, but that's a good question. But I don't know. I'll have to go look at it. I know that it was 2-3 years ago. I believe it was at Ruhr King or at TSE. I'm not sure. But I assume peat would be not where you're growing things. You don't put field crops in peat because it can be deep and you can get swamped. But
Peat is basically from a bog.
Yes.
what?
It's from a bog,
That's correct.
and so it's not something that you can,
I wouldn't assume that they would spray. Is that what you're saying?
yeah.
Yeah, that's my assumption, but that's a good question. I have to look at the bag and say, is it organic or not? I mean, they could easily put that on there. Yes, question.
What's the disadvantage of using an organic, say, potting soil?
Okay. How long? I've taken organic classes in Indianapolis through Beck Seed Company. They have a non-organic. In other words, they use Roundup and their normal sprays. And they have an organic section that they only grow organic through. And they had a class on that in Indianapolis. And I took that class. And how long does Roundup last? What?
I don't know.
The half-life is 18 years.
That's the half.
So what happens when they spray every year? They have to spray to kill the weeds. It keeps building and building and building. So the poison that's in Roundup is still there when I eat corn that doesn't say organic. Yes, that's what your question?
Yeah, I think you misunderstood my question. Yeah,
Okay.
I understand about all that nasty spray
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
glyphosate. You're recommending a peat-based soil mix. I was asking what it would be the disadvantage of, say, an organic soil mix.
No, I'm not.
A potting soil.
Good question. The
Potting soil.
regular potting soil is too coarse for my seeds, but a starting potting soil is fine.
Seed starter.
So seed starter works. So I'm not recommending one thing over another. I'm just telling you what I do.
So the potting soil would be
These 3 are good.
too dense to get the root going.
No, it's too coarse. You'll have chunks of wood and chunks of clumps of dirt that you're not going to grow anything in for these nice little seeds, microgreens you're going to grow. So that's a very good question, and thank you for continuing to pursue what you're asking, because I wasn't getting it, was I? Yeah. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. So the that takes care of the and there's one thing I didn't cover. Like with the sprouts, I want some kind of untreated seeds. Some of my seeds will come from my garden. I know what I put in my garden. I didn't put chemicals or poisons in my garden. So you can do that, or buy the seed. That's the simplest way, is just to buy what's it called? True Leaf is a good source. You can get an ounce to try to experiment a pound, which is what we bought with clover and radishes. Radishes are really easy to grow. So for the starter, that's what you want to use, right? And the you could also get 25 pounds or 50 pounds. That's a little more than I'm ready to experiment with. That's hundreds of dollars worth. And I'm not ready to start a business selling microgreens yet. Or sprouts. So there's advantages and disadvantages. You have to keep this at the right state of moisture and dryness so it doesn't mold and it doesn't rot or dry out for longer. But there's a different texture to them. To me, sometimes I like the microgreens better than the sprouts, but they're both good. And like she says, they're similar nutrients.
So what you're saying is the microgreens are a bit more fussy.
Longer time.
Yes. But
I would call them less fussy, but longer time.
okay.
That would be my, because you're laboring over them, longer. Although with this one, because that's not suggested. I've never seen it anywhere that anybody else used a heating pad to do that. I'm thinking, I'm going to try this. And it worked. 7 days I have microgreens ready for harvest. And you're seeing the result. And so yeah.
One thing that you learned a lot about was how much water they needed.
Yeah, that's the key. And that is when I watched videos to learn and studied to learn and read the internet, I was reading that a lot of people only spray the tops. I had a few failures because I got some that didn't grow because I didn't get enough moisture. When it starts to lean over, I stop watering. But lately I have seen a few sites that say once you have roots showing up on the bottom, then it's time to water on the bottom. And the one I watched today actually was more detailed than I've ever seen before, and that is they say for a whole tray, anywhere from a cup and a half or 2 cups or two and a half cups to start, but you don't want it to be wet under the soil tray. In other words, the soil tray is going to be wet, but underneath it shouldn't be soaked and water standing underneath. If it is, then it may be too wet, and you'll be possibly at a risk of mold causing damage to the plants and not growth. So that, or the other side is not enough water. Just a second, not enough water. You'll have the other issue of non-growth, and then a second harvest. But it would have been a much better harvest the first time if I had just had enough water and grown straight. Like with this, compared to that one, this one's much better than this one. Yes.
So basically, when you get the roots, you want the roots to be touching the water, not the bottom of the thing to be touching the water.
I didn't hear.
You want the roots to be touching the water, not the bottom of the pan.
Yeah. If you'll notice, this is not a sieve. So it allows the water to seep up, wick up, but it is not a sieve, so you'll have an issue with, not all the roots are going to be able to go down, right? So does that help answer? Yeah, okay.
So you can trim those and actually get a second harvest if you leave them alone and let them grow? Like she's trimming them,
Yeah.
second harvest?
You can't usually get a second harvest. The reason
I
why
made a mistake.
he didn't Yeah, on this one, he harvested it, but he realized that he hadn't watered it enough, and not all the seeds had sprouted. So he got a second harvest.
Because of crop failure the first time. Sorry. I'm using farming terms, not microgreen terms.
What do you use the plastic wrap for?
So, let's get to the process. Okay? We're running out of time. Meredith, you want to hold this? So, when you go to plant, you want moist soil so that you can, or medium, so that you can squeeze a drop or two out of the material that you're using when you plant in it. Then you level it out. You put it in the pan and you level it out. And you flatten it. Why would you do that? Because when you have sprouts, you're rinsing them and dumping it. Rinsing them and dumping it. Here, I want all my seeds to get wet. And it has to be flat. Otherwise, you have a clump of seeds and no seeds. And a clump of seeds and no seeds. If it's all flat, you can get seeds everywhere and growth everywhere. This is a little coarser than the starting mix. So I may be losing 5 or 10%, maybe 5% of my growth that I would get, because this is too big a chunk for a little seed to set roots down through. So anyway, then I just take and I sprinkle fairly heavily. You can come up and see if you want to. It's an experiment, and I encourage you to practice it and just keep practicing till you get the density and the results that you want. But you see, the seeds are really tiny, and when you see the microgreens, they're much bigger. Oops. There we go, that's better. Okay. And then I'll put this back on top. Well, actually, what's the next step? And I use this because when I'm spritzing my garden plants and I'm doing a whole baker's shelf full of plants, I get tired of, and with this, it just keeps, you can either lock it down or hand hold it, and it quickly sprays everything. You don't want to soak, but you want to moisten well, because you heard what happened with some of my first attempts. I got failure, but it was because I didn't get it moist enough. The dirt wasn't moist enough, and then I didn't add enough on top to get even production. After you moisten, then you're going to put the top on it. And then I'll do the other side, and you put the brick on it. That's right, thank you. And then I'll do the other side with the radishes and do the same thing. And then I'll cover it with the plastic wrap. And twice a day, like with the sprouts, I'll uncover. If it's wet down at the bottom, if it's water down here, I want to be real careful how much I spritz it, how much I spray it. But if it's not wet down there, then I want to water a little more heavily. Okay? So you want to get your sprouts at the same time starting, not a day or a week later. Yes, Martha.
It's basically like when I start my seeds in the spring, inside.
Yep.
My rule of thumb is when before they sprout up, I spray.
Yep.
But once I have a good stand coming up pretty well, then
find that different gardeners and different microgreen or sprout growers do differently. I find that if I don't do both, I don't get a good harvest. I get unevenness like that. Okay? So I've got to water enough on the bottom, and I do like every day or every other day 2/3 of a quart of water. Okay? That's more than they recommend. The others, people that I've watched recommend. I will wet it underneath and let it back down, and then I'll do a little bit on top to be sure, again, that seed, those seeds are moist, because I want all of them to sprout 100%, or as close as I can get to it, right? Yep. So we'll go ahead and...
Oh, yeah. Can we go ahead with what, or are there any other details that you need to give? Because we've done about the same thing here.
I have to look at my sheet.
Okay, let's do that.
That's pretty much it.
Mm-hmm. We'll do that later.
Okay. So we prepared the medium. We've gotten the moisture in it. We've moistened the seeds that we put down. We've covered and we've weighted. We'll do that on both sides. Then we'll put the plastic wrap on.
How long do you leave the weight on? What's the purpose of the weight?
Good question. Thank you. Basically, it's different. Like we've mentioned about this pushing the radishes and the clover, it's different however you grow, and the plants. So keep track of what you're doing. What some sites recommend is with radishes 3 days with weight, because it helps you get your soaking and starting more even. And you want those young sprouts in the dirt to send their roots down first and make them stable and solid, and to make their stems stiffer. Have you ever seen a tree root or a plant root bust rock or concrete? I have. That's the principle with the microgreens. It will raise the brick up that much. And when it's up that high, you take the weight off. You leave it covered and dark, and it'll be yellow. And you leave it covered still. And it'll get up to about that tall, and you say, okay, it's got most of the height that I want it to have, because once I take the top off, it's going to stop rising up to find the sun. It's trying to reach its neck out and find some light. So I take that off now, and within 24 hours it turns green. And those cotyledon leaves start to spread out. So you have your photosynthesis starting. And then what happens next is that when you split a bean, you see the little leaf, the true leaf in the bean between the two halves. That starts to shoot up between the leaflets, the cotyledons. And then you have your true leaves. And when you see those, what's it ready for? It's ready for harvest, right? That's what you got next. It takes about 3 days approximately with the weighted, and then a day to 2 days. It should have its full height, or pretty much its full height, and then you're going to take the darkness off and allow it to finish up another 3 or 4 days. So you're going to end up with about 7 days of growth, and you see we did well here, 7 to 14 days max. And then you have your harvest. So how many times a day do we spray or rinse? Twice a day. Is there ever a time you'd rinse it more? If you see they're turning dry. With the broccoli, we had trouble with that. I don't know why, but if we didn't rinse it 3 times a day, it seemed like it was dry, and it didn't thrive as well. So just watch your plants and make sure that they're not turning off and the roots turning brown like they've gotten dry or something. And if they do, then you have to go from there and fix that, adjust the frequency. Depends on how humid or how dry your house is, right? Questions? We've had some good questions throughout. Oh, yes.
Walter, how can you reuse the same potting soil? Same over and over again?
Good question. I don't. I keep it simple, and I put it out on my raised beds, and it's good nutrients still. But that's a good question. They say you can rinse.
Comes out like a mat.
They say you can wash it good, and you get the washed off part and use that again. I've never done it. So that's a good question. And if you find out, let me know, because I want to know, because that's going to save cost.
No, I was just gonna ask the little wheatgrass plants you see in the grocery store for sale, those.
Sure.
I thought that those were just something that you could buy and it just kept growing back and so it doesn't just grow back,
Some things like peas will grow back, but they won't be as solid. Like this, they won't be as dense as round one.
Wheatgrass might. Wheatgrass might grow back a little bit just because of the nature of it's a grass.
Most likely will not be as dense as the first. And the question is that organic or not?
Probably not. Yeah, I doubt it.
I haven't looked, so I'm not corrected. I'm just trying to think through the process. Is it organic or not? I don't know. That's one thing we have to check. But that's a good point. Let's see here. Anything else? So a question. Why do you put a brick on it?
To have some resistance to make it work harder.
To push its roots down in, to make it lift and become more stout. So it's doing everything it can, like you say, make it work harder, make it build strength and push, just like it's going to bust the rock. This is going to lift the brick. And when it gets to that, like I said, a good inch and a half, take the brick off and leave it dark, and it's going to still continue to look for that light. Make sure it's moist enough, but not too wet. Other questions?
Let me explain a little bit about the greens that we have over here. They've put together some nice little refreshments. One of my favorite ways of using sprouts or microgreens is on sandwiches. I mean, I'll put a thick layer of sprouts. Kind of work better on sandwiches just because they're kind of tangled up together. Anyway, they hold together. But so right here we have a lettuce. It's a salad greens mix. It's the same thing as these were a little bit bigger, a little bit longer. You can see the beginnings of lettuce leaves there even. And so this is the same thing, only not as old, okay? I mean, not as mature growing when it was harvested. This is clover, So 2 of the the salad mix. Then this is red clover. This is the radish, and then a couple different ways of doing the alfalfa. So.
Okay, and we have a little, it's a garbanzo sandwich spread. It has, no, it's not hummus. It's a garbanzo sandwich spread that has a little bit, it has some peanut butter, just so you know, in it. And homemade bread. So thank you all for coming. Thank Meredith and Walter for doing this. Sure enjoyed it. And we got even more information this time than they did last time. I was there. So we'll ask blessing over the food. Dear Father in heaven, thank you so much for what we've learned today. And I ask that you will bless this food as we eat it. In Jesus' name we pray, amen.